Good morning, and well, whenever you're listening, this is Dr. Lanier, entrepreneur dentist advisor. You're an entrepreneur dentist, hopefully, if you're watching, or an aspiring entrepreneur dentist. But today, I have someone from the Dentist Entrepreneur, which is an organization that I've attended. Actually, I was speaker at some of their events. I've attended a lot of their events over the years because I met some really great people there. And one that I'd like to introduce and interview today is Darin Acopan. And he and I met, he said it was 10 years ago. I think it was like 20, 30 years ago because it seemed as though so much time ago, but he still looks the same. I've aged like hell. He said it's because I'm an owner and he's not. And that's a beautiful thing. But Darin, welcome to our show here, and let's see where we go with this. How are you today?
I am great, Dr. Lanier. Super humbled. Again, you're one of those individuals that when I got started in dental 10 years ago, were so gracious to lend your time and expertise. So happy to do your show and great to see you doing another chapter in dental.
Yeah, man, it really is. It's just a great thing. I tell, and you were telling me about your story and how you got started. And initially, you got started with Stratus, correct? Tell us that again about how you got started with
Stratus.
So,
if you want, I can do the origin story about how I started at the Bowflex company and then
give us that.
Yeah, so for a lot of you in the industry that know me, my background is not dental. I'm not a clinician. 10 years ago, I didn't know even what a pro fee was. That's how green I was in the industry. So my background is, prior to dental, I spent 10 years scaling up the Bowflex company. So a lot of you remember those exercise infomercials on TV. That company was struggling to get beyond $50 million in revenue. So they hired a core management team. I was part of that team. We scaled it over the 10-year time frame from 50 million to 400 million. And then I took my options and exited. And a friend of mine recruited me into dental at that time. And I said, we used to work at Bowflex. I know about Bowflex. I don't know what a pro fee is. Why do you want me? I think you got the wrong guy. And she says, don't worry, you're not going to do anything clinical, but on the business development side, you're able to connect the dots really quickly. And so I would love to have you at least give it a shot. And so that's where you and I met shortly after my introduction to dental. I befriended you, right? And came out to the CDA, spent some time with you, had a lunch in Southern California, and we've been friends ever since. And then what happened is in 2017, I was able to partner up at DEO with Jake Poole, our managing partner and CEO. And then at the time, Dr. Mark Cooper was still in the organization. So Dr. Cooper started this group called Mastery Company back in 1984. And then in 2017, he handed the baton off to Jake and myself, and we've never looked back ever since. And it's scaled tremendously since that time frame.
Man, this is beautiful. I've noticed because when I first came in, Dr. Cooper was still there, and then with you and Jake took over, and now Emmett Scott is part of your team as well.
Emmett was huge. If Emmett hadn't come on as a partner, the DEO wouldn't be at the same scale that it is today. So we're very lucky to have him on as a partner.
Yeah, Emmett is a great guy. I met him at the ADSO before he was president and later became president at ADSO. But his whole thing, I just met, he has such a personality, and his opening, I like the way, because at the time when I was at the ADSO, I think I was the only Black dentist that was there at the time.
Yeah, I kind of
felt out of my element, and I was looking around, and some people were very friendly, some were not. Some people feel as though it's kind of competitive, so they're kind of, when they come. But Emmett was open arms. We met, and ever since that very first meeting, we've been friends. And I'd like to interview him, but since I've known you so long, and your personality is likewise such an open and great personality, I said let's get Darin on and ask him the questions and see where we go with this. It's all about, I think, people development, and once you get the people development, then you start the business and systems development. So I think I'm going to start with my sheet so that I'm not all over the place. I've
Sure.
written out some of the questions that people had asked, and I wanted to kind of go through those. But so you shared with us your journey, and from Bowflex, so forth. So you did say, but let me ask you again: what drew you into the dental industry? What excited you about working with this managed group dental practices that made you want to switch over to dental?
Great question, Dr. Lanier. So really, it's about the why, right? So the why for me, whether it's Bowflex or I was in financial services prior to that, and now in dental, it's you got to be part of something that's larger than yourself, right? For legacy or for otherwise. And for me, it was all about helping people who help the patient. And in healthcare, that's what we all signed up for. What better cause? And so I saw what Dr. Cooper saw, and we had alignment, and with Jake leading the charge, I just never wanted to see dental consolidate the way that medical did, right? I don't
Yes.
think managed care really is working for any of us. And so if there was a platform for entrepreneurial dentists to learn from others in a collegial mastermind setting, that would probably be the best place to have an impact, right? I'm not a clinician, I'm not an owner, but as part of an organization that teaches and coaches owners on how to run the right business, recruit the right talent, and retain them, you could have a major, major impact. I'm sure between Dr. Cooper, Jake, Emmett, and myself, we've impacted thousands and thousands of individuals year to day.
Oh yeah, yeah, surely. I've seen it just by being there. I see, and that's what I try. And one of the reasons I wanted you on is because I want to expose my listeners to the need. If you want to be an entrepreneur dentist, you need to attend some of these seminars and summits and so forth that exposes you to other people that are in the industry, how it works, why it works, and some of the resources that are there. So I think this is just opportune. So I really, my job is to encourage people to attend, to start getting your mindset right, so you understand how you're going to grow to get there. And a lot of times, especially the younger ones that are coming out of school, I encourage them to work first, but start attending these things so that you build up, so that once you're ready to launch, you know what you're doing and you can establish goals and so forth before you get there. But my third one, so that and like I said, I'll be all over the place if I
Sure.
don't read from my list here. As a head of the business development for DEO, what are the key qualities or criteria you look for in selecting new DEO members?
That's a great question, Dr. Lanier. So really, it's about the business side of things, and the business side of things does not come naturally to most clinicians, right? Clinically, they can be a 10 out of 10. On the business side, on the HR side, that's typically what's keeping you up at night as an owner. And so you might not be a 10 out of 10 on the business operations side. And so I'm looking for someone that's hungry and willing to learn, but it's nothing to do with clinical. It's all about, how are you as a CEO operating? Are you able to recruit and retain the right team? And then do you actually have the systems in place to scale this up if you want to go beyond the single location that you have? So really, it's just someone that's humble and looking to be part of something bigger than themselves. And that's not a fit for everyone. I totally get that. And so we probably say no to 9 out of every 10 applicants. And we just want to work with the top 10%. And normally they come from an existing member that refers one of their friends into the ecosystem.
Excellent, excellent. I like that because, over the years, Darin, I've had a lot of people that I've mentored, and I'm always pushing them to try to follow my footsteps. But I realize not everyone is cut out for this, and most, I guess, most shouldn't do this. It's we were saying earlier. I was talking to Q, and we were saying that it's simple, but it's not easy. Simple meaning, you set your goals, you build a team, and you get the right kind of systems in place, and that's simple, but it's not easy. And most people, once they find that it's not easy, they're ready to turn around and run. So I'm trying to do as you are, is select just the top 10%, the ones that I think can make it and go ahead. I do encourage people to, if they have that desire, to go ahead and become entrepreneurs. However, I warn them, it's not for everybody. If you're not built like that, I think that me personally, I was built for this. You know, this whole thing of dentistry, and dentistry has been for me, one of the greatest professions that I could have chosen. And it's just such opportunity out there if you want to be an entrepreneur, because by and large, most dentists back in the day when I started were going to school to become business owners.
Mhm.
Now it's a whole different thing. Most of them are coming out ready to work as associates. They want a contract. They want a bonus, signing bonus, and they jump from place to place if they're not getting it. And then the thing of building teams, you know, as you guys have built, I see you have a pretty large team now. That's another thing of, and I would imagine you guys go through a lot of that, how to build the team, and it's
Yes.
so important. Can you speak on that just a little bit, because I don't
Uh,
think you do anywhere if
yeah.
you can't build a team.
Yeah. It's who you hire really is the only competitive advantage, who you hire and retain. Like with AI and technology and everything else, that's great. But at the end of the day, it's a human that is going to have the interaction with the patient. And so for us at DEO, whether it's hiring internally for our team or we're working with one of our clients, A+ players like to be around other A+ players. If you go cheap and try to save on overhead by hiring B and C players, well, number one, a B player will only hire C players because they don't want to get replaced by anyone. A C player
Right.
will only hire a D player, and a D player will only hire an F player. And I know some of you listening to this podcast or on social media, you've got some of those people in your roster right now. And the reality is, I'm not saying get rid of them right away, but you are doing a disservice to yourself as an owner and to the patients by hiring talent that is subpar. And so I would rather go without than make the wrong hire, because ultimately you're going to pay a much higher price in the long run than if you just go without or you wait for that A+ player. And they're out there. Here's the
Yeah,
reality though, they're not job hunting, they already have a job. So you're only
exactly.
going to get an A+ player who's already gainfully employed. You're just going to give them a better option to help them personally, professionally, and financially.
Oh man, so true. I just hired someone, and I paid them above what I was expecting to pay. But in order to get her, I had to convince her to leave her existing position and to relocate and to another city. So wasn't easy. And sometimes your advisors, especially my wife, who's like, you can't pay that much. But like you, I've learned if I'm going to get to where I need to go and get there quickly, I have to get someone that already has the experience. They've built organizations. They've taken them to this point before. I can't go and train someone how to be that kind of leader, and they've never been there before, and I'm trying to go fast. So sometimes you got to pay more. And then, like you said, you always got to get them from an existing, because if they're sitting at home, they're probably not the person you want,
Correct.
you
I mean,
know?
think of it like professional sports. All the best deals, they're getting paid a ton of money, and they're coming from another organization. To your point, Dr. Lanier, they're not sitting at home twiddling thumbs.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to recruit, and you're pulling, and you're paying good money. I'm a Clipper fan. So the Clippers have been down for many years, but they've gone out and spent a lot of money to recruit people like Kawhi and Paul George, and now, you know, James Harden, and people that to put together a professional so that they can make a run at it. And we're the same way. And like you said, with professional teams, if you're going to make a run at it, then you have to put together the right people and the right kind of thing, that you have the team that can do it. So
Exactly.
great with that. Number 4, let me see where I'm going with this. Tell us about your strategic partnerships you've been involved in developing for the DEO, and how it benefits dental entrepreneurs.
Great question. So we wouldn't have any what I would call strategic partnerships per se, but we do have, separate from the clientele and in the education and coaching company, we have a separate media company. And that's where you've been, and a lot of people listening to this have been to our live summits. And so that's where we have a lot of relationships with a lot of the vendors in the space. And we vet them, right? We internally within DEO, just the clientele alone is about $2.5 billion worth of dental expenditure, about 300 owners, 1,500 locations. So just within our ecosystem, it's pretty robust, even though we're not a DSO. So we get feedback loops from those clients saying, who do you like vendor-wise? Who do you not like? And then we typically have relationships with the ones they like to come out and sponsor our live events. And so there's this virtual cycle ecosystem, if you will, from every single category, from dental CPAs to M&A brokers to supplies and labs. We pretty much know who all the best players are, and we allow them to come and sponsor our live events, like the one coming up in Orlando this June.
Yeah, that's big. Orlando in June 13th through
13th to the 15th at the Gaylord in Orlando / Kissimmee. The challenge is communications got cross-wired, so ADSO is going to have their event at the exact same time in Denver. So I think that's fine. Everyone on the West Coast go to ADSO. Everyone on the East Coast come to DEO. Right. So it is what it is. There's so many events going on. You're gonna overlap every now and then.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I would encourage my listeners, attend some of both. Kind of move around, attend, and you'll find sometimes you'll meet some of the same people at different events. And you establish those relationships, and it's just a lot of times, like you said, those resources are part of the reason that you're there, so that you can find the right, as you say, dental CPAs, the M&A, because if you're in and you're building something, my thing is, as the entrepreneur dentist, one of the things I put here is the exit strategy. And that's big for me, is once I'm going into anything, I want to know, how am I getting out? Where and the book is available, Amazon. But how am I going to get out of whatever it is I'm getting in, especially if I'm putting my money, my time, and someone else's money in? I want to see some kind of exit strategy. So building that exit strategy, you need to have all of the, and therefore you're building a team also, not just your internal team, that the people that you have on W-2s and salaries, so forth, but your team of, like, your attorneys, your
advisors in the background are more important than your internal team, right?
Exactly.
With Kids Dental Care, when you went to exit, you were probably working with them 15, 20 hours a day to get the deal done.
Yes.
And so you need that. And the only way you meet them, these live events are like our version of a dental country club. You cannot build these relationships in your four walls. You have to get away, and you have to lose production clinically in order to build these relationships. There is no shortcut for this.
Yes. And therefore, at the final year, when I was getting ready to exit, I wasn't able to really, it was even hard to do the admin, definitely no clinical. I stopped doing clinical a few years before. But yeah, it pretty much takes up a full day and that whole year going forward. And I've been asked by quite a few dentists, is it worth it to pay that kind of money, the retainer for the investment bankers and the CFO and so forth? But there's no other way to exit if you're going that route, seeking private equity or industry partner. You can't get the real money and the value out unless you have that team that knows exactly how to take you through it. So you have to pay them at least some kind of retainer and go forward with it. But like you said, you have to know your team and have put that team together before you get started.
Exactly. And you're not paying for the physical contracts. That is part of the package, but you're paying for their Rolodex of contacts.
Yes.
And
they've been there before.
They've been there before. They've done it. So do you want to be cheap and have the blind lead the blind by going with your local attorney or CPA? Or do you want to actually hire experts that might charge 3, 4, 5x, but in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing compared to what you're going to get on the exit?
I think we're onto something here, Darin. Is this morning, like we're saying, you have to pay. Now you want to be selective, so you have to go and see who the competitors are, whether it's attorneys to walk you through this. I worked with a different company on my exit before. Right now, I'm working with Acopan, who you guys work with quite a bit. Matter of fact, next week I have
Brian coming on.
Yeah, Brian coming on. So it's just that, and I love the other company that moved me through. It's just that I've known Brian and I started recently getting some advice and, you know, using them, because this thing's starting over again. Once I exited with Kids Dental Care, now I have a new one called Kids 2 Dentist, because I sold the name. So, and I wasn't intending to get back into what I'm doing. I was going to just build out a lot of dental offices and then lease them to dentists. Come to find out, as beautiful as they are and as much and well placed as they are, people don't want to pay unless they see that you're banging in some revenues and everything is in place. So I got stuck having to redo it. But I'm not upset at it. You know, whatever way it goes is the way it's supposed to go. But now and it's different now. It's different because the way I did it, I sold in 2017. But by the time I started again 2 years ago, which would have been 2021, because right after COVID, I kind of launched these two of the offices and a third one recently, and the fourth coming up, and one of them has two. But it's taken a lot of the things that the contracts and so forth to hire, shortages of staff. And that's another thing you were speaking about on as far as building the team. Even how to recruit staff and to retain them is very important. The whole thing of, oh man, Darin, I'm learning, and I'm old and gray, and I'm learning all over again, because it changes all the time. AI and the uses of things like that, everything is coming at me. But let me ask you this: what unique challenges and opportunities do you manage dental group practices face compared to other healthcare sectors? What do you see as far as these group practices, and what kind of challenges are you seeing right now?
Great question, Dr. Lanier. So I think obviously the interest rates are hurting us, right? Just the macroeconomic environment in general. If it was hard enough to manage things and payroll, et cetera, with 0% interest rates, and now look at what they are today, your buying power just goes down. So you can't scale as fast. You can't afford what you used to afford. And so you got to work smarter. And so at the end of the day, I would still not deviate from the fact that it takes the right team members in order to get to where you want to go. I wouldn't shortchange that process. But the reality is you just can't run it the way it's always been run. Like, I don't think you could have built Kids Dental Care today the way you did it back then.
Oh, no,
right?
Well, definitely not.
So learning from those that have been there and done that is number one. Find whether it's DEO or another mastermind group, you're probably better off learning anything in life, following in the footsteps of others that have already gotten to where you want to go. So go find your tribe is what I'm saying, number one. That probably ups the probability of success more than anything else you could do. Sure, you could learn how to do another clinical procedure, but then you're going to have to spend dollars on marketing. And if you don't have the right staff to answer those calls and get them in the seats, it's just this vicious cycle of spending good money after bad. And so at the end of the day, it really comes down to hiring the right people, finding the right tribe, trying out different things. There's not one silver bullet solution to the problems that you're facing that are keeping you up at night as an owner. So go try different things. And chances are, with the associations you belong to, there's the cream of the crop. You ask them, what associations are you a part of? What have you tried in the past that you've really liked? What would you suggest for me? Because you're 2 or 3 steps ahead of me. If you were back in my shoes, what would you have done differently? Just start asking questions and being vulnerable. And that's what I would do in any situation to get to where I want to go.
You know, and I like being at the DEO summits and so forth, is that when you guys do a panel and people are asking questions, a lot of times the questions that are on your mind or even you haven't thought about, you're like, wow, that's good, write that down, you know, and you get answers to things that you didn't even think about, but then you realize, wow, I'm going to need that. And so I think that's another benefit of just being there, asking questions, and then you find out resources, even, you know, whether it's things that, like you said, billing and outsourcing and different resources. Once someone start asking questions and panelists that are normally well advanced, beyond what the audience sometimes, or even sometimes the audience is advanced, but they may be having some challenges in certain areas. it's good to hear from other people what they're doing, and they face some of the same challenges, and like, wow, that works. I should try that, you know. So that's the thing. I'm encouraging people, get out and learn. I mean, if you make enough mistakes, you're going to learn. But what if you could cut that time in half, or with third, or even, you know, to a small fraction, just by someone else telling you, don't go that way. This is what I experienced when I went that way. I went here and this worked for me. So I like that kind of thing as well. Let me see. Next, we have, good one here. Based on your experience, what advice do you have for dentists looking to scale their practice or join a managed group practice? They want to scale, or they want to join a group practice. I sometimes I have dentists that want to join my practice, group practice, as a partner. And I almost set up a model to do that. There's a lot of models out there. I was pointing in that direction, but my spouse didn't. And sometimes it's better to just, rather than fight with your spouse, you know, you just continue down the road you're going. But what advice do you have for those that want to scale or want to join a practice, group practice?
The first question would be, why do you want to scale? Why do you think you have to?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if you haven't optimized your first location, why do you want to scale chaos?
That's a good one. I know a lot of people scale before, well ahead of time, and they have empty space, and now they have 2 or 3 practices, and all of them are running on one leg. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
How about get really good at recruiting and retaining and mentoring associates before you even scale? Because if you don't know how to do that, then there's no way you can play the scale game successfully. You're going to have this constant revolving door of clinicians, and life is going to be a nightmare, and you're going to wish you went back to one. So get really good at recruiting associates. And hygienists are hygienists, right? It's the challenge is just the ratio of, like Emmett told us, 1 new hygienist for every 5 dentists that graduate. So the ratios are off, supply and demand wise. But the reality is you need that clinician in there to run that second location, or even so that you can dial back your clinical to focus on the procedures you want to do, so they can do the basic restorative and you can mentor them. You're going to need an associate. So there's no honor in going it alone at the chair for 30, 40, 50 years on end. You're going to need help at one point or another in your career as the owner, dentist, founder. And so I would say, before you even scale, ask yourself why. And then number 2, if you can't get a good pipeline of associates, forget about scale.
Yes, good. And the thing you mentioned about mentoring, I think that's so important. And I pass it along to young dentists, in that they figure I'm the only mentor, but I want to pass it along like this. If you are the doctor at the chair, and I haven't practiced in years, and you're telling me that your chair side isn't at the level you want her to be, then you should mentor her. And I, right now, I'm mentoring a new doctor, and he had some challenges as far as communication. And once you think about it, dental school doesn't really teach that. I think he's a very, very fine clinician, a perfectionist, but you know, we were kind of butting heads and losing employees because of his personality of wanting, and you know, being very direct. So I have to step in rather than lose him and lose all of the employees. It's time for me, and I realize it's a challenge for me, because now and for me to just try to move on to someone else when I think he has all of these skills, I'm trying to mentor and bring him along. Then I have to hold the team together, and then bring in management that can also do these things before I can back away and go back to doing something else. So I find challenges all the time, but I think the thing that helps me with this is I always tell myself, I was built for this. You know, this is what I was built to do. And I come from sales and marketing. So I like selling people on things. And I recommended to him, and I went back, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Very, very important. And they don't teach that in dental schools, but I think that's a very big part of it. You have to be able to influence people to get them to do what you want done, or you'll be stuck doing it yourself all of the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And everyone knows how to sell. For those that say
Yeah.
they don't know how to sell, if you're married, you sold. So you sold someone to marry you, and you sold someone to stay married to you. So the reality is it's more about aligning interests. And so I love that analogy and explanation, Dr. Lanier, of you working with the associate, because the easy thing to do would be to get rid of the associate and then bring a new one on. It's a lot of work to work on the HR side of things, and then to get the staff aligned and the management aligned. It's not an easy task. And so that also relates back to the previous question of scale. Now imagine doing that 5 locations over, 10 locations over, 20 locations over. You can't do it yourself. You need a leadership team to go in and be boots on the ground when you can't.
Yeah. And that is so important. I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate with Kids Dental Care. I was able, and I try not to put it too much as I, because I'm a believer in faith, and I believe in God sent whomever He sent to me. And there were a few you have to kick to the curb, and you're like, whoa, let me push back from this person. But that's all part of the growth itself anyway. So we go through these experiences, and the experiences make us who we are. And therefore, we don't need all of the other security. The security kind of comes from within once you have all of the experience there. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Speaking of experience, how is your experience in scaling direct-to-consumer company like Bowflex informed your approach to business development in the dental industry?
It took years off my life doing it as rapidly as we did it. But that is where it comes down to people and people management and aligning interests. And I didn't know that early on in my career at Bowflex. I think like in any organization, whether you're in healthcare or in another market, you think that you can get there alone just based on your wit and your work ethic. And what you realize is that even if you have a couple of direct reports that aren't at your level, your job is to get them to their potential and then get out of their way and support them. It's like an inverse pyramid is what you find out, right? That's how you know a true leader is when the true leader eats last, right? And they are at the bottom of the food chain, not at the top. But organizations where the CEO or the owner is at the top and everyone fears for their job security when they walk in a room, that's a bad culture. So that's what it taught me. I used to manage control and command early on in my career at Bowflex, and then I realized I have to work through my direct reports who are ultimately working with the people that are talking on the front lines. And so learning as much as I could about psychology, professional development, personal, professional, financial goals, and aligning those with the needs of the business and the needs of the employee. That's really what it came down to. The numbers take care of themselves when you take care of your team, but your team knows. Your team knows if you're just in it to get rich. And so that's talked about the exit. Are you talking about the exit so that you can create a legacy for yourself and your family, or are you going to take a few of your employees along with you when you climb up that mountain? So and you need to be vocal about that and say, okay, I, as a business owner, I put all my eggs and chips to the middle of the table. I do expect a return, but for those of you that helped me build this, I expect you to be rewarded as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And right now, Darin, I've told my team, because I'm at this point in life that I'm doing my second DSO, and I want it to be bigger. I want it to get there faster, but I need to exit. And everyone was telling me first, don't tell anybody that. But I said, no, I can't. It's hard for me to operate and not tell people what I'm trying to achieve. My team, I want the team. But now I sat with them recently and told them when we exit, they'll get a percentage. Everybody on the team gets it. They get a chance to be at the dinner bucket when it's time to eat because they were in the hunt. And you want to be able to share that, I think, and it motivates them. And by saying they'll get a percentage of the exit, it lets them know that we're not only talking top line. Here we have to talk about bottom line as well, because if we're going to go multiples of EBITDA, then it's about what kind of profit. So now they're thinking not just revenues. I need to get a certain amount of profit for this company, and when he exits, I can exit, or I'll have enough. If I don't want to leave my job, at least I'll be financially set that I don't have to work if I don't want to. So I think that's the thing I enjoy bringing to my leadership team now that I didn't do before. There's several things that I'm doing now that I didn't do before. Like you said, if I were doing the same things now that I was doing back then, I'd be losing. And even, back then, and I started out this one, I had giant billboards along the highway. I was doing a lot of things. And recently I discovered my AdWords campaign knocked all of those out of the water. I was like, wow, just one thing, because people are searching and they're on the phone, and you have to be where they are. It doesn't matter what used to work. People don't look up. Even my kids are going places. We were in Italy, and they're on their cell phone. And I was like, put that damn thing away, put it away and look up. But people are, and when they search, and when you need something, me, you, anyone now, if you need something, you just search on your phone and it pops up. So you have to be where they are, and you have to adapt to whatever is going on. Adaptability is key to surviving this thing, I do believe. So
Exactly.
So that's why I said, well, I'll probably show up at the DEO summit, because I'm still learning. And some of the things, like I said, for a few years, I sat back and watched TV and played my guitar and so forth. And you guys were moving forward. And when I jumped back out there and started doing some of those old things, I realized, whoa, they moved from where I was, and now it's over here. So I like looking at that. Let me keep moving here. What are some of the common misconceptions or myths about entrepreneurship in dental field that you've encountered, in your role? What are some of the misconceptions you run into with young dentists trying to launch and so forth? What are some of the things you see?
Great question. So I want to tie back into the previous statements you made about having your team share in the upside. A lot of dentists have this mindset of, no, I want 100% control. I want to own 100% of my pie. I don't want to dilute my equity. And my question to them would be, would you want 100% of your dental practice or 1% of Google? Because I'd rather have 1% of Google. So It's okay to get other people on the cap table as long as they can help grow the pie. And that should be part of your template or your game plan. Is what positions do you need on the organizational chart that you're currently having to fulfill as the owner and wearing multiple hats? That is not the best use of your time to do a $20 an hour task when you're doing $1,000 an hour procedures. So who do you have to hire to build your org chart to make it more robust and scalable so that you can work on the higher magnitude of impact tasks in the business that they need you as the CEO to do? So that's number one, is get the right partners and work on the right things. And by working on the right things, that means learning how to prioritize what to say no to, which is most things.
Right, most things.
Most things you just say no to because they don't get you to where you want to go. They just look great.
Right. And you spoke about an org chart, and that's something that I'm reintroducing now. I brought on new people, but I find that a lot of times people don't understand how an org chart, reports and directives and so forth, and I get really crossed up. Can you just speak on the importance of having an org chart?
Yeah. Actually, in DEO, whenever we onboard a new client, fundamentally there are three things they have to get right that we give them access to right away. The first thing is prioritization, and that means, for all of you listening, I can guarantee you, if I go back to January 2023 of last year, you had 20 things that you wanted to get done, and most of them didn't get done. And you've added them to your list for 2024 on top of all the other things you're going to get done this year, which is ridiculous. You got to learn what to do, what fires to put out, and what fires you let burn. So prioritization is one. Then org chart, because when you know what you want to accomplish and what the prioritization is, you then can dictate, what is the staff and the team I need to help me get there? And that's going to change, just like a professional sports team. The roster today is not the roster tomorrow, and you have to be okay with that. It doesn't mean you fire everyone. It means you get them in the right seat on the right bus. And when they figure out that they're not in the right seat or they don't want to be on the bus, you give them an exit. And then the third thing is financials. I know most of you don't know if the procedure you just did chairside is profitable or not until your accountant tells you. And even then, they probably don't even tell you. McDonald's knows how much a sesame seed on a Big Mac bun costs. That's the difference between a professionally run organization and a mom and pop. Now, what I will say is you need either a director of finance or financial controller to help you make forward-looking statements, because your bookkeeper, accountant, or CPA only knows how to tell you how much you owe and what you could have changed in the past, but that's in the past. You need someone at the practice level that is going to help professionalize the P&L and the finances. And a lot of you are probably still on cash versus accrual accounting as well. So there's a whole list of things that we could get into, but really it's about prioritization, the org chart, and the P&L and the financials. You get those three things right, it makes your life a heck of a lot easier. And I'm sure, Dr. Lanier, you would agree with your experience at Kids Dental Care, that you spent a lot of your time on those three areas.
Yes, no doubt. And I was fortunate to have someone that was acting financial controller when I was with Kids Dental Care. I don't have that right now, and that's the next position that I intend to, because as you say, it's managing numbers, and most entrepreneurs are big picture people, but in order, you have to have someone there that's detailed on the numbers, because if the numbers aren't there, you want them to let you know, and they tend to panic first. I'm a guy that tends to, by the time I panic, you probably should have ran a few, a little while back. But you do need someone that's sounding the alarm, telling you where you're going, guiding from those numbers. And I've had that in my office before, and that's where I'm going next. Because also I saw on your website, and it's very true, margins are getting smaller. Right now with the larger DSOs, they started offering higher percentages, and they're offering signing bonuses. And it's hard not to, if you're going to be in the game, you have to compete, or else they're going to go with whomever is offering the most. So your margins are getting smaller. I was like, wow, if I'm paying 5% more than I was before. So that's 5% off of my bottom line. So the only thing I can do at this point to make up that difference, I have to grow my top line in order to grow the bottom line. And it's, like you said, it's better to own a smaller piece of a giant pie than the whole thing of a smaller pie. But that is something that you have to look at. What are the margins? And because most of the people in the organization aren't looking at bottom line, they're looking at top line. And they're saying, you're doing great, give me a bonus. You guys did so good. But sometimes they could do that and they're giving away the entire farm. And if you're not really watching, you think, and I know a lot of dentists, and you've seen this over the years, and that's the reason you were saying that they're jumping into 2 or 3 practices before they get one, because the bigger it looks, if they have 5 practices, it looks better than 1 practice. If you made, if your top line was $3 million, it looks better than $2 million, until you find out that your expenses were right up there with your revenues. And then you're like, wow, I could have just been an associate because I didn't make anything, but I look good to everybody from the outside.
Yep. And if you're growing your top line, but your profitability is shrinking, what seller is going to give you a premium, or buyer is going to give you a premium for that? No one's going to want to acquire a dumpster fire.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So if you don't know how to grow same store sales and you're only growing through acquisition, that's the other thing they take a look at. Right. At the end of the day, they want to see potential at the practice level, regardless of number of locations.
I'm going to ask you for some personal guidance here, since you're going there. And we've talked about cash versus accrual-based accounting. Of course, most dentists, and even previously with Kids Dental Care, I was cash basis, but then at the end, I had to bring in a CFO to switch everything over to accrual basis to prepare for EBITDA and the exit. What do you recommend to a small company like mine with 5 or 6 practices? When do you suggest that they switch to accrual-based accounting? At what point?
So, full and fair disclosure, I'm not a CPA or accountant, so this is not financial advice, throwing that out there. The reality is, go find your CPA or accounting firm if you don't have someone internally. And even if you have someone internally, you're probably still going to need a firm that has a track record of success in helping practices scale the same model that you're scaling. And then what I would ask them to do is, like, can you get me in touch with 1 or 2 references so I can ask them how it was? What infrastructure did that dental group need in order to get the full benefit of working with a firm like yours? That's step number 1. So as far as cash versus accrual, that really is going to come down to the expert advice you're given, and depending on how much infrastructure are you going to build. Are you trying to build a $5 million, $15 million, $50 million, $500 million DSO? The complexity is based on the revenue that you're trying to attain. At 1 million, you don't need that. You probably can stay on cash, right? So it just depends on where you want to end up, which all ties back to your original comment about exit strategy.
Yeah. Okay. And
I think more important, you need to understand internally, what is the job description, role and responsibility and accountability of a finance manager versus a director of finance versus controller versus CFO. Most individuals, even with an MBA, don't even know that. And at DEO, we've mapped all of it out. So we can tell based on your level of revenue, based on your level of complexity, this is the appropriate person you should hire in the finance role. And this is what their accountability should be. And this is the UCR for compensation. So at DEO, we've got playbooks on all of this. Yeah.
Emmett comes from a CPA background, doesn't he?
Yeah. So he and I, funny enough, we have similar backgrounds. We were both financial advisors first things in our career. He grew two businesses and sold them both. I grew one and sold it. And then that's when I got recruited by Bowflex.
Both you guys are funny.
Yeah.
You know, and earlier, you know, I talked about joining you guys again, and I got kind of busy with, and I was thinking, well, maybe it's not time. Maybe I'll just continue. But I realized there are some things that I could, you know, even with my years of experience, that I can sharpen, you know, and build a team, because it's building a team of advisors and having eyes and ears that I don't have to go through the whole process again, that they could see exactly where I'm at and help advise. And that's why I'm still interested of working with you guys, and we'll be at the event, and we'll look into getting back together, because I like people with these financial backgrounds. I had a guy with me, and he can make numbers just dance off the page, and it was really good. Had some other challenges that, you know, we couldn't work together for so long because, you know, people come, whatever package they have, you know, they bring sometimes a different bag with them. But the thing I did like is the way I could just walk in and not only numbers, he'd switch them to graphs and plot everything and just make it easy for me. I could just walk in, because, you know, I can't even really do spreadsheets, man. And, you know, when you have someone there that understands where you need to go and how all of these things need to be structured so you can see it, not only so you can see it, but other people that are looking for it, it's already in the format that they're looking for.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Very
and that's where paying, taking from the profitability, paying an expert to offload that, and they could do it much better than you and I ever could, pays for itself multiple times over. And so think of all the other priorities and tasks that some owners that are listening to this are doing themselves. You're losing money, and you're doing a disservice to yourself and your business by trying to do too much on your own.
Yeah. You know, just from our discussion this morning, I sat here and I've made a decision. I'm going to go ahead and put the financial controller in place. Something that I've been waiting on. You know, I have a bookkeeper. I worked with an accounting group before, and they had been doing my dental for a number of years. But when it came time to exit, I brought in a CFO and did it. I think that now is probably time that I move to a different group. But I think the main thing is bringing someone on as my financial controller that knows the industry. Like you said, I don't have to teach them. They don't have to go and learn again. They've already done this over and over again. So we'll talk off camera about some things that
Sure.
might be beneficial. Yes.
Absolutely.
Let me see. I have a few more, and I know we're getting close to our 1 hour, and I'm not going to take up too much of your time. Let me just see if can you share any success stories or lessons learned at your time at the DEO? Did you inspire other dental entrepreneurs? Any success stories you want to share?
Absolutely. Well, what I would say is internally, just on our DEO team, we've had a couple of former employees go off and start their own consultancies and businesses. And that's really special to Jake, Emmett, and myself, right? As much as you want your A+ players to have a forever home with you, the reality is some of them just want to hang their own shingle and start their own companies. So that, number one, has been, and that's happened several times now at DEO, that's been a success story in itself. But with some of the clients, I think, especially our legacy clients, a lot of them haven't touched the handpiece in a while, and that's because of the work we've been able to do with them. They have 100% associate-driven models. They don't necessarily have private equity, but with what they make as far as themselves in the CEO role and the distributions they're getting from helping them grow the pie, they're much happier than if they, in another world, they're still practicing chairside 4 days a week. And they're earning a lot, but they're miserable. And so I would say, especially when we work with clients at the 10 million and above mark in revenue, 100% they want to put the handpiece down. They want to move into that CEO role, and they want our help in helping them build out their team and teach them how to be a better leader. That's really what it comes down to. Between 1.5 million and 10 million, a lot of them are still practicing clinically, and they're just at that stage of their development. So for us, it's really about, okay, clinically, how do you get yourself into a position where if you did want to put the handpiece down, you have the associates in order to do that, you have the infrastructure and the team on the business admin on the clinical side that understands that transition, because it's a tough choreography, right? You saw that yourself in your career, to go from producing dentists, taking home a really great paycheck, and then to not have that and be an executive, you actually probably went through a dip in take-home income during that time. And that's that J-curve that everyone goes through. And so how do we accelerate you through that? And then get the rest of the team to understand, okay, Dr. Lanier is no longer practicing. Don't put him on the schedule. He is full-time CEO. Put these other doctors on the schedule. And that's just the way that we're going to move forward as an organization, as an entity. So for us, we've had too many success stories for me to pinpoint, but typically we are the place that a lot of the emerging groups that a lot of you are listening to hear from, a lot of the successful dentists that are in your geographic region have either come through the DEO in one form or fashion over the last decade, or they're still part of our group. And so that is, I think, a testament to our success is the fact that we've been able to scale it up beyond what Dr. Cooper did up until 2017. And then down the road for Jake, Emmett, and myself, whenever we decide to exit, which is many, many years from now, I want to see the legacy continue and us handing the baton off to someone that can continue to grow it. And
when you speak of that, here's a bigger one. And I'm asking personally again, I'm at a point whereas my next challenge is to select a CEO. I think I'd like to do kind of like a Rick Workman what's his
Pat Bauer, Rick Workman type
Pat
of
Bauer.
Yeah.
I love Pat. You know, just listening to some of the things, but I love the situation and like they say, the story how Rick brought Pat in, and you can kind of step back. And I think, but I'm afraid because I've always almost like the sole proprietor that's always done things. I've always, you know, when it's like driving, you know, when you get in a car, I like to be in the driver's seat until I can find someone that I can trust that's going to drive better than me. But I feel as though at my age and my experience, and it's just time for me to step back and let someone else drive. But I don't want them to drive me in the ditch. So that's going to be a challenge for me. Any advice on selecting someone to take over your company?
Well, there's a book that was recommended to me by one of our clients that I recommend to everyone now. It's called Die with Zero. Have you heard of it?
No, Die with Zero.
it's a phenomenal author who's a business background. And he talks about, if we look at the bell curve, which is a normal distribution, that's everything in life. And so what I would say, Dr. Lanier, is you've got more of your career in the rear view mirror than the front windshield.
Exactly.
So a dollar is worth less to you now than when you were in your 30s and 40s. So time is way more valuable.
Exactly.
So if bringing a CEO in who is going to not be as good as you, but can get 80 to 90% of the things done, is just like bringing in an associate dentist. They're not going to be able to be as proficient as you clinically, but if they can do 80 to 90% of what you could do, and you can get your time back, how do you put a price on that?
Man,
you can't.
True.
Right? If
True.
you were younger, I probably wouldn't be saying this. But
no, it's,
I mean,
it's true because there are things I find, Darin. I post some videos. I've taken over the years some music classes, and I have upright bass, I have electric bass. But I found that even after I studied music years ago, when I got back into dentistry, I can't multitask because once I'm doing what I'm doing, everything else is a distraction. I can run these companies, but I spend so much time thinking about it, and I don't want anything to run into the ditch. So I spend a lot of time thinking about it, and I don't even pick up my instruments anymore. And the wall in front of me is getting closer and closer. You know, I can kind of feel it. I don't have the runway that I used to have, like you said. So I'd like to offload some of this and put someone in that position as CEO, and I could be like a chairman advisor. But that's the hardest step for me, you know, trying to really come to that. So maybe that's an area we can also work on is how to get me from this step to where I can have more free time. I could work on mentoring and advising and so forth, but hiring both the financial controller and the CEO and being able to let go a little bit,
exactly.
being able to, and I think I'm getting more and more into that mindset, but I think I need a little bit before I get there. So that's going to be a challenge for me. And I'd love to work with you on some of those. I have a couple of more, and then I'm going to let you get back to what you were doing. I appreciate you joining us.
No, this has been wonderful. I always will be happy to make time for you. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I mean, it's informational it's helping me, and it's helping hopefully my audience out there, because these things are the things, if you're going to go to that next level, you have to know these things, and you can't get everything from just this video. I would advise you, like I said, the DEO, the Dentist Entrepreneur Organization is just huge. I've been attending it. I do my podcast, The Entrepreneur Dentist, but we work together. It's a synthesis that I think is good. And my advice is attend some of these if you're interested in going to that next level. So right now, what trends or innovations do you see shaping the future of these managed group dental practice orders, and how should entrepreneurs prepare for what you see coming?
Great question, Dr. Lanier. So really comes down to talent acquisition. So when you're an associate, I mean, when you graduated from dental school, how much was dental school? 10 grand, 12 grand?
It wasn't a lot. I can't remember now, but it wasn't a lot.
It wasn't a lot, right? Compared to USC, 500,000, right?
Yeah,
and
that's a lot.
So with the debt service they're graduating with, and actually what we've seen is the percentage between, like, let's just call it 1 or 2 location practice owner. The difference between what the owner is making take-home wise versus the associate might only be 17 to 20% difference. And the younger associates and graduates, they see this. They would rather have more of that work-life balance. They don't want to be working 5 or 6 days a week to hang a shingle. There's no honor in that to them. So if that's the way that the horse is running in that direction, for those owners out there that thought that they had an exit strategy by selling to an associate or two, they better rethink that. Because ultimately the exit is probably going to come in the form of a strategic DSO buying them out. Because they might even be too small for a private equity target. Yeah. And so that being the case, it's the associates. You can say, you know what, they're just not graduating with the clinical ability that I did. Well, guess what? It's going to only go in one direction. There's too many dental schools out there. They're accepting too many incoming class members, and they're graduating who they're graduating. Some of them still haven't had the ability to, do the same number of procedures that you did in dental school 1 or 2 years out.
Right.
So you got to get really, really good at recruiting, but recruiting knowing that the skill set is the skill set coming into the business, whether you're one location or multiples. The other thing is, you don't have to, on the business admin team, you don't have to just recruit from within dental. You can go to Target, you can go to Starbucks, other companies that have really great customer service. Go to hospitality, where that's in their DNA. If you have a really robust training and development system, and you could just use something as cheap and easy as Google Docs, but it actually shows them exactly how to run the position at the front or as a treatment coordinator, that's sales at the end of the day. The clinical can be taught to them, but have you built that training so that you can go recruit from outside of these chum-filled waters that everyone else is trying to recruit from, especially on the business admin team, and go recruit from people that have proven track records outside of dental. I come from outside of dental, so if it sounds like I'm halfway intelligent, you don't have to be from dental to understand dental, especially if you're not a clinician. You can level someone up by going to events like DEO, by listening to podcasts like this one. There are education platforms out there, and they're much more accessible today than they ever were. So that's number one. It's all about talent acquisition.
Yes, and like you said, having a training and development program it has to be something that's ongoing and getting the people. Therefore, you can't get complain just because a person that you brought in isn't already prepped, because you see less and less of that. You have to train people at whether it's the clinical level or the admin level or whatever, bring them up. And if you have a development program, and I like something you mentioned earlier, it's about people development.
Yes.
And the more that they see that we're developing them, the more they want to stay with us, because we put something in to help bring them up to another level.
Absolutely. And then for those of you in the last couple of minutes that we have, Dr. Lanier, if the summit's too far out and you have like questions that are keeping you up at night, if you hit me up on DEO Dental Group or you hit me up on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to spend some time with you to understand what you're struggling with. And I'll even give you a couple of free downloads that are going to help you out. So for your audience in particular, would be happy to spend, 10, 15, 20 minutes with them on a quick call to actually show them, okay, this is what your problems are. This is what the recommendations would be if you were in DEO. And that's not joining DEO, that's just a free call. And then here's a couple of resources.
That is very beautiful. And we put the website up, and Darin Acopan is a friend of mine. We go way back. The only reason I have him on is because I know he's a smart guy from the day I met him down at the Anaheim CDA, and just the conversation we had. I think you had set it up. We went to lunch or something. Yep. We sat down, we had a little sandwich together. And since then, we just, he said it was 10 years ago, seemed like a lifetime ago, but we actually did some nice things together, and then getting invited to the DEO and with Dr. Mark Cooper initially, and then getting to meet the people that are in his group. Such a wonderful group. I don't know all of them, but I know Emmett and Jake and yourself, and I've met some of the other ones. But I know the way you guys put these panels together is very, very informative. So I look forward to seeing you guys in Orlando, and hopefully you guys will join them as well. But do take him up on that. He actually said it. He said if you want it, you can reach out to him. So Darin, you said it, and I'm gonna have some of my people reach out to you. We want to appreciate you for taking the time to join us. Do say hi to Emmett for me and Jake, and let them know that they may be guest invited soon. Everybody out there, pick up the book, Entrepreneur Dentist, How to Exit Your Dental Business Rich. And Darin is helping us get there. But when you go in, you want to go in thinking about how you're going to get out, how you're going to exit. And like he said, we're more than likely going to wind up exiting, selling to one of these large groups out there. So build a product. They're looking for product, and we can build a product and sell it to them at multiples of what we have. Do that. Darin, thank you so very much. and I will look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Lanier. You have a great
All
day.
right.
Take care.
You take care. Thank you.